Welcome to Glorious English, the channel where you learn English through powerful and emotional stories and biographies. Today we share a story that changed the world, the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was born an orphan, lived in silence, and walked alone, yet became the voice of truth for all of humanity. He had no throne, no army, and no wealth, but his kindness softened hearts, and his message reached the ends of the earth. This is more than just a biography. It is a journey through faith, struggle, mercy, and love, told in clear, gentle English, so that every listener can understand and feel the message. From Mecca to Medina, from pain to peace, from rejection to legacy, every chapter of this story carries lessons that still shine today. So, take a deep breath and listen with your heart. Because this is not only the story of a man, it's the story of mercy, hope, and truth for all of us. Chapter 1. The Orphan Who Changed the World. Long ago, in the hot, dry land of Mecca, a baby boy was born. His name was Muhammad. He was born in the year when a huge army came with elephants to attack the holy city, but they were stopped by a miracle. That year became known as the Year of the Elephant. It was a year remembered by everyone in Arabia. Before Muhammad was born, his father Abdullah had passed away. So, from the first day of his life, he was already an orphan. His mother, Amina, loved him very much. She held him close and took care of him with deep love. She named him Muhammad, which means the one who is praised. When he was still a baby, he was sent to live in the desert with a kind woman named Halima. This was the custom of the time. Living in the desert made children strong and healthy. Halima loved baby Muhammad like her own son. After taking him in, she noticed many blessings entering her home. Her animals gave more milk, and her family became happier. Muhammad lived with Halima for a few years. When he grew older, he returned to live with his mother. One day, when he was just 6 years old, Amina took him on a long journey to a place called Yathrib to visit his father's grave. It was a long and tiring trip. On the way back, something very sad happened. Amina became very sick. She could not move. She died on the journey and was buried far from home. Little Muhammad sat beside her body, crying. He had lost his mother in the middle of the desert. After the death of his mother, Muhammad was taken back to Mecca by a loving servant named Baraka. She had cared for him since he was born and loved him like her own child. Now Muhammad had lost both his parents before he was even 7. He had no mother, no father, and no home of his own. But his heart was pure, and his patience was strong. When he returned to Mecca, his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, welcomed him with open arms. He was a respected elder and loved Muhammad deeply. He gave him a special place near him and always made sure he was cared for. But sadly, after just 2 years, Abdul Muttalib also passed away. Once again, Muhammad lost someone he loved. Now the young boy was only 8 years old and had already seen so much sorrow. He was given into the care of his uncle, Abu Talib, who was not a rich man but had a kind heart. Abu Talib had many children and little money, but he never let Muhammad feel unloved or left out. He protected him and raised him as if he were his own son. As Muhammad grew, he became known for his honesty, quiet nature, and kind heart. He helped with small tasks, looked after animals, and never caused trouble. People noticed that he was different. He didn't lie, he didn't fight, and he always told the truth. Even as a child, he showed signs of great character. Though he had lost many people he loved, Muhammad never became angry or hard. His heart stayed soft and his soul stayed clean. He walked the streets of Mecca with simple clothes and a peaceful smile. His life was full of sorrow, but also full of strength. This was just the beginning of the story of a man who would change the world. Chapter 2. The Honest Trader and a Noble Marriage. As Muhammad grew into a young man, people in Mecca began to notice something very special about him. He was calm, polite, and always truthful. He never cheated or lied. When others argued, he stayed quiet. When people fought, he brought peace. Even though he was poor, he had something more valuable than money. He had honesty and a clean heart. He worked hard to earn his living. One of his first jobs was taking care of sheep in the hot hills outside Mecca. It was a simple job, but it taught him patience, care, and responsibility. Later, he started helping in trade and business. People saw how honest he was, so they began trusting him with their goods and money. He never kept anything that was not his. He always gave people what they were owed with a smile. Because of this, he was given the name Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy. Soon, a noble and respected woman named Khadijah heard about this honest young man. She was a smart and wealthy businesswoman in Mecca. Many men worked for her, but none like Muhammad. She asked him to manage her trade caravan to a far place called Syria. Muhammad accepted the offer and went on the journey with her servant. When he returned, Khadijah's servant told her amazing things. He said Muhammad had been kind, fair, and honest throughout the trip. He made great profits without cheating anyone. Khadijah was deeply impressed. As time passed, Khadijah began to think about Muhammad often. She saw in him a man of good character, not just a clever trader. Though she was 15 years older than him and had been married before, she felt that he was the right man for her. She sent a close friend to ask if he would be interested in marriage. Muhammad thought about it and said yes. He respected Khadijah and knew her to be kind, wise, and caring. Their marriage was full of love, peace, and understanding. Khadijah and Muhammad lived a very happy life together. Though she was rich, their home was simple. They shared everything and always looked after each other. Khadijah supported him in every way. She made him feel loved and safe. She gave him strength when he felt tired. Their home became a place of comfort and calm. They were blessed with children. Some of them passed away in early childhood, which brought pain to their hearts. But they remained patient. One of their daughters, Fatima, would later become very special and close to her father's heart. Despite the sadness, their love for each other never faded. During this peaceful time, Muhammad became even more thoughtful. He began to notice how people in Mecca were living. Many were greedy and selfish. They worshipped idols made of stone and wood. They didn't care about the poor. He didn't like what he saw. He wanted to understand life, truth, and the purpose of everything. He started spending time alone in a cave called Hira, on a mountain near Mecca. There, he would sit quietly, away from the noise of the city. He would think deeply, pray softly, and watch the sky, the stars, the silence, and the wind made his heart feel close to something greater. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to change forever. Muhammad's early life, his marriage to Khadijah, and his time as a trader built the strong foundation of his future. He was a man loved by many, trusted by all, and respected for his character. But something powerful was coming, something that would not only change his life, but the life of the whole world. Chapter 3. The Cave, the Angel, and the First Revelation. Muhammad's heart had always been gentle and quiet. As he grew older, he began spending more time alone, thinking deeply about life. He wondered about the stars in the sky, the birds in the air, the people in Mecca, and why the world was filled with both beauty and pain. He did not like the way people in Mecca were living. They were worshipping idols made of stone, cheating each other and hurting the poor and weak. His heart could not accept this darkness, so he began climbing a rocky mountain near Mecca called Mount Hira. There was a small cave there where he would sit for hours, sometimes even days. He took food and water with him and sat alone, thinking, praying, and searching for truth. The cave was peaceful. The wind was soft. The stars at night were bright. He asked questions in his heart. Who created the sky? Who created people? Why are we here? One night during the month of Ramadan, something amazing happened. It was a night like no other. While sitting in the quiet cave, Muhammad suddenly saw a bright and powerful figure standing before him. It was the angel Gabriel. The angel was large and filled the sky. Muhammad was shocked. His heart raced. His body shook. He had never seen anything like this before. The angel spoke. He said, "Read." Muhammad was frightened. He replied, "I cannot read." The angel came closer, held him tightly, and repeated, "Read." Again Muhammad said, "I cannot read." The angel pressed him again for the third time and then said the words, "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous." These were the first words of the Quran. They entered Muhammad's heart and stayed there. He didn't understand what had just happened, but he knew it was something great. He quickly got up, his heart beating fast. He ran down the mountain, through the darkness, back to his home. He was shaking with fear and said to his wife, "Cover me! Cover me!" Khadijah wrapped him in a blanket and held him close. She looked into his eyes and saw fear, but also light. She said, "God will never harm you. You help the poor, you feed the hungry. You speak the truth and you care for your family. God will always protect you." She believed in him completely. She took him to see her wise cousin, Waraka, who had studied the holy books of past prophets. Waraka listened carefully to Muhammad's story. His eyes filled with tears. He said, "This is the same angel who came to Moses. You have been chosen by God. You are a prophet." Muhammad was surprised and quiet. He didn't ask for this. He didn't expect it. But he accepted it with a sincere heart. For some time, more revelations stopped. Muhammad became worried and wondered if God was still with him. But then the angel came again with more words. These words were full of light, mercy, warning, and wisdom. He was told to share the message with his family and close friends first. Khadijah believed without any doubt. His young cousin Ali, his best friend Abu Bakr, and his servant Zayd all believed in him too. They prayed together quietly and learned the verses of the Quran by heart. They did not yet speak to the public because the time had not come. These were the first steps of a mission that would soon reach the hearts of people across the world. A simple man in a quiet cave had been chosen to carry the message of God. The world would never be the same again. Chapter 4. Standing Alone with the Truth. After receiving the first message from the angel Gabriel, Prophet Muhammad felt the weight of something great on his shoulders. He was now chosen by God to guide the people. At first, he kept the message quiet, sharing it only with close family and friends. They met secretly in homes, learning the words of the Quran and praying together in peace. They spoke about kindness, fairness, and believing in only one God. But soon Muhammad was told by God to speak openly. This was not easy. Mecca was a city filled with idols. People worshipped statues made of stone and wood. The leaders were powerful and rich. They didn't want change. They didn't want to hear that their idols were false or that the poor should be treated kindly. But Muhammad stood up with truth in his heart and courage in his voice. One day he climbed a small hill near the Kaaba, called Mount Safa. He called out loudly to the people of Mecca. They gathered around him, curious to hear what he had to say. He asked, "If I told you there was an enemy behind this hill ready to attack, would you believe me?" The people said, "Yes, we trust you. You never lie." Then he said, "I am sent to warn you. Worship only one God. Leave your idols. Turn to the truth." The crowd went silent. Some looked angry. One of the first to speak was his own uncle. "Abu Lahab," he shouted angrily, "may you be ruined! Is this what you gathered us for?" From that day, the trouble began. The leaders of Mecca grew angry. They did not want to give up their idols or power. They began to insult Muhammad, calling him a liar, a madman, a poet. But he was none of those things. He was calm, truthful, and full of mercy. Despite the insults, Muhammad kept speaking the truth. He talked about caring for the poor, freeing slaves, being honest in trade, and worshiping only one God. Slowly, people from all parts of life began to believe. Some were rich, like Abu Bakr, who helped free slaves. Some were poor, like Bilal, a slave who was beaten for saying God is one. Some were young, like Ali, who stood by the Prophet bravely. But the more people believed, the angrier the Quraysh leaders became. They beat the weak, tortured the poor, and made life harder for anyone who followed Islam. Still, the believers stayed strong. When the pain became too much, the Prophet told a small group to escape across the sea to a land called Abyssinia, ruled by a kind Christian king. The king listened to their story and gave them protection. The people of Mecca then tried to stop Muhammad in other ways. They went to his uncle Abu Talib and begged him to make Muhammad stop preaching. But Abu Talib, though he did not yet accept Islam, stood by his nephew. He said, "I will never leave him." They offered Muhammad money, power, even kingship, if only he would stop spreading the message. But he replied, "Even if you put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, I will never stop." The pressure grew stronger every day. The Muslims were mocked, pushed, and treated like strangers in their own city. They met in secret, prayed in silence, and held the message of Islam close to their hearts. But they were not weak. They had faith, and faith made them strong. Muhammad was now standing alone with the truth. But he did not step back. He kept moving forward, one word, one prayer, one soul at a time. His mission had begun, and no force in the world could stop it. Chapter 5. Pain, Patience, and the Year of Sorrow. As the message of Islam began to spread slowly in Mecca, the leaders of Quraysh became more angry and afraid. They didn't want people to stop worshiping idols. They didn't want to lose their power and wealth, so they planned something cruel. They decided to completely cut off the Prophet, his family, and his followers from the rest of Mecca. No one was allowed to trade with them, speak to them, or help them in any way. The Prophet and the Muslims were forced to live in a narrow valley outside the city. It was called Shib Abi Talib. For 3 long years, they lived there in hunger and hardship. There was little food or water. Many nights they went to sleep with empty stomachs. Children cried from hunger. Some people began to eat leaves and dry grass just to survive. But their faith stayed strong. They prayed, helped each other, and stayed close to the Prophet. The leaders of Quraysh thought this would stop Islam, but it didn't. The Muslims remained united. Some kind-hearted people in Mecca secretly brought them food. After 3 years of suffering, the boycott ended. The agreement had been written on paper and hung inside the Kaaba. But when people checked it, they found that white ants had eaten the paper except for the name of Allah. That was a sign. And the boycott finally ended. The Muslims came back into Mecca, weak in body, but strong in spirit. Soon after returning, the Prophet faced more pain. his beloved wife Khadijah became very sick. She had given everything, her money, her time, her care, for the sake of Islam. She had supported the Prophet from the very beginning. Now her body was weak, but her heart remained strong. One day, she closed her eyes and returned to her Lord. The Prophet was heartbroken. He had lost the one who stood by him when no one else did. Not long after Khadijah's death, his uncle Abu Talib also passed away. He had protected Muhammad for many years. Though he never accepted Islam, he always supported his nephew. Now, the Prophet had lost two of the most important people in his life. He felt alone and deeply sad. This year became known as the Year of Sorrow. Without Abu Talib, the Quraysh became even bolder. They insulted the Prophet in public, threw dirt on him, and mocked him wherever he walked. Still, he did not fight back. He remained patient, kind, and calm. But he needed support, so he looked beyond Mecca. He traveled to a city called Taif, hoping its people would welcome the message of Islam. But Taif brought more sadness. The leaders laughed at him and told their children to throw stones. His feet were bleeding, and his body was tired. He found shelter under a tree far from the people. But instead of asking for revenge, he raised his hands and prayed, "O Allah, guide them. They don't know what they are doing." Even in pain, his heart was full of mercy. That night, something special happened. A group of jinn heard the Quran and believed in it. Even when people closed their hearts, others, unseen and unknown, were being guided. It was a sign that the message was spreading beyond what anyone could see. Soon after, the Prophet received the most amazing gift. One night, the angel Gabriel came and took him on a miraculous journey. First, he was taken from Mecca to Jerusalem, where he led all the earlier prophets in prayer. Then he rose through the skies, meeting Adam, Moses, Jesus, Abraham, and many more. He reached a place so high that no one else ever reached before. There he was given the gift of 5 daily prayers for his people. He returned to Mecca the same night. Many laughed at him, calling him crazy. But those who truly believed, like Abu Bakr, stood by his side. They said, "If he said it, then it is true." That night journey, called Isra and Miraj, became a great sign for the believers. Though this year was filled with loss and sorrow, it also showed the strength, patience, and trust of the Prophet. His heart had been tested, but he never gave up. He kept walking with truth, no matter how hard the road became. And soon a new door would open for him, a new city, a new beginning, and a new hope. Chapter 6. A New Home in Medina. After many years of pain and rejection in Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad knew that his message needed a new place to grow. The people of Mecca had closed their hearts, and the trials had become harder every day. But far away, in a city called Yathrib, hope was beginning to rise. That city would later be known as Medina, the city of the Prophet. During the pilgrimage season, people from different cities came to Mecca. Some of them were from Yathrib. They had heard of Muhammad and his message. They had heard about his honesty, kindness, and truthfulness. They listened to his words and were deeply touched. They believed in one God and wanted peace in their city, which had many fights between tribes. They said, "This man can bring us together." At first, a small group of 6 people accepted Islam. The next year, more came. Slowly, the number grew. In one special meeting near a valley called Aqaba, 75 men and women from Yathrib promised the Prophet that they would protect him and follow him. They invited him to come and live in their city. They said, "We are ready to give our lives for you." That promise was strong and clear. It became known as the Pledge of Aqaba. The Prophet now told his followers in Mecca to start migrating to Yathrib, quietly and carefully. One by one, the Muslims left their homes. their wealth, and their families behind. Some escaped at night, some during the day, but they all went with hearts full of hope. In Yathrib, they were welcomed like family. The people of Yathrib became known as the Ansar, the helpers. But the Quraysh of Mecca were furious. They could see that Islam was growing stronger. They made a final plan. They decided to kill the Prophet himself. They gathered men from every tribe to attack him at night. But God had a greater plan. The Prophet was warned by the angel Gabriel. That night, he asked Ali to sleep in his bed and cover himself with the same blanket. The enemy saw the blanket and thought Muhammad was still inside. In the darkness before dawn, the Prophet left his home with his closest friend, Abu Bakr. They walked quietly to a secret cave called Thar, hidden in the mountains. They stayed there for 3 days while the Quraysh searched everywhere. The enemies came close to the cave, but God protected them. A spider had spun a web over the cave's entrance, and a bird had laid eggs nearby. The Quraysh thought no one could be inside. While hiding, Abu Bakr was afraid, not for himself, but for the Prophet. Muhammad said calmly, "Don't be sad. God is with us." These words gave peace to both their hearts. After 3 days, they continued the journey to Yathrib with a guide. It was a long, hot journey across the desert, but their hearts were full of light. When they reached Yathrib, the people were overjoyed. Men, women, and children came out singing and smiling. They had waited many days for this moment. Some climbed trees to see him. Others ran through the streets shouting, "The Prophet has come!" It was a day of joy and history. The Prophet chose to stay at the house of Abu Ayyub, a kind man who opened his doors with love. The Prophet's camel had stopped there. Guided by God, that place became his new home. One of the first things he did in Medina was to build a mosque, not just a place of prayer, but a place of learning, love, and unity. The mosque was simple, with mud walls and palm leaves for shade, but the hearts inside it were full of light. The Prophet also made peace between the 2 big tribes of Medina, Aus and Khazraj, who had fought for years. He made them brothers. He also created a system where Muslims supported each other like one body. The rich helped the poor. The strong helped the weak. People from Mecca, known as the Muhajirun, the migrants, were welcomed as true family. For the first time, the Muslims had a place where they could pray freely, speak openly, and live in peace. Medina became the center of Islam. It was a new beginning, but the Quraysh of Mecca had not forgotten. They still wanted to stop the message of Islam, and soon new challenges would come. But for now, the Prophet had a new home, a city of light, a city of love, a city that would carry the truth to the world. Chapter 7. Battles of Faith and Courage. In Medina, the Muslims finally had peace. They prayed freely and lived as a united community. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, became both a spiritual leader and a wise guide. People came to him for advice, for justice, and for peace. But this peace did not last long. Far away in Mecca, the Quraysh leaders were still angry. They could not accept that Islam was growing stronger. They wanted to destroy it completely. The Quraysh took the wealth and homes of Muslims who had left Mecca. They threatened war. They wanted to stop the message of Islam before it spread further. The Muslims knew they would have to defend themselves. They did not want war, but they could not sit and do nothing. They had the right to protect their lives, families, and faith. The first great battle came in the 2nd year after the Prophet's arrival in Medina. It was called the Battle of Badr. The Muslims had only 313 men. They had few weapons and little armor. The Quraysh came with over 1,000 strong fighters, horses, and weapons. On the night before the battle, the Prophet prayed deeply. He raised his hands and said, "O Allah, if this small group is destroyed, there will be none left to worship you on earth." His prayer was full of tears. The next morning, the battle began. Though outnumbered, the Muslims fought with faith. The sky was filled with dust and cries. God sent angels to help them. The Quraysh were shocked. Many of their leaders were defeated. The Muslims won the battle. It was a clear sign that truth had power, even if the numbers were small. The news of the victory spread everywhere. Islam became stronger, but the Quraysh did not give up. 1 year later, they came again with a larger army, 3,000 men, to attack Medina. The Prophet and his companions went out to face them at a mountain called Uhud. Before the battle, the Prophet gave strict orders. Stay on this hill and do not move, no matter what happens. These archers were placed to protect the Muslims from behind. At first, the Muslims were winning, but some of the archers, thinking the battle was over, left their positions to collect the enemy's goods. This was a mistake. The Quraysh army saw the open space and attacked from behind. Chaos spread. Many Muslims were wounded. Even the Prophet was hurt. Blood ran down his face. His tooth was broken and he fell into a hole. His companions rushed to protect him. The Muslims lost many brave men that day, including the Prophet's uncle Hamza, who was killed and badly injured. The Prophet cried when he saw him. Though the Quraysh left without finishing the fight, the battle was painful. It taught the Muslims a deep lesson: to always obey the Prophet and never let pride or greed take over. The third major battle came in the 5th year after Hijrah. This time the Quraysh came with 10,000 fighters and joined other tribes to destroy Medina completely. The Muslims were small in number, but they prepared wisely. One of the companions, Salman the Persian, suggested digging a deep trench around the city. It was something never done before in Arabia. Day and night, the Muslims dug the trench with their own hands, even in the cold. The Prophet worked beside them. He smiled, lifted the soil, and gave them hope. When the enemy arrived, they were shocked. Their horses could not cross the trench. They tried many ways to break through, but they failed. Cold winds and fear entered their hearts. After weeks, they gave up and left. This event became known as the Battle of the Trench. These battles showed that Islam was not spread by the sword, but by faith, patience, and unity. The Muslims never fought to harm others. They only defended themselves when attacked. Even in war, the Prophet taught kindness. He told his soldiers, "Do not harm children. Do not destroy trees. Do not kill the weak." The Muslims had faced death, hunger, and fear, but their hearts were firm. Their leader was brave, and their faith gave them strength. These were not just battles of swords, they were battles of truth. Courage and trust in God. Soon a new chapter would begin, one that would lead to peace and a return to the holy city of Mecca. Chapter 8. Peace Treaty and the Path to Victory. After the long battles, the Muslims in Medina still dreamed of one thing: going back to Mecca, their homeland. It was the city of the Kaaba, the house of Allah, built by Prophet Abraham. The Muslims missed it deeply. They wanted to visit it peacefully, just to perform Umrah, a small pilgrimage. So in the 6th year after the Prophet moved to Medina, he gathered 400 Muslims and said, "Let's go to Mecca, not for war, but for worship." The Muslims wore white clothes and carried no weapons, only swords for safety. They brought animals for sacrifice and walked with peace in their hearts. When the Quraysh heard this, they became angry. They thought it was a trick. They sent soldiers to block the Muslims from entering Mecca. The Muslims stopped at a place called Hudaybiyah, just outside the city. There, the Prophet sent a messenger to explain that they only came for peace. But the Quraysh did not listen. Time passed. Tension grew. Finally, the Prophet offered peace again. He sent Uthman, one of his trusted companions, to speak with the Quraysh. But when Uthman did not return quickly, rumors spread that he had been killed. The Muslims stood up, ready to fight. They gathered under a tree and gave a strong promise to the Prophet they would stand by him no matter what. This became known as the Pledge of the Tree. It showed their love, loyalty, and bravery. Soon news came Uthman was safe. The Quraysh then agreed to talk. A peace treaty was written. It was called the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, but many Muslims felt sad when they read it. The Quraysh made many conditions. They said the Muslims could not enter Mecca this year, but could come back the next year. If someone from Mecca joined Islam and went to Medina, the Muslims must send them back. But if someone left Islam and ran to Mecca, the Quraysh could keep them. It seemed unfair, but the Prophet agreed. He saw the big picture. He said, "This is peace, and peace will bring victory." The Muslims were confused but trusted him. They turned back to Medina without visiting the Kaaba. But Allah had a bigger plan. After this treaty, people began to visit Medina freely. They sat with the Prophet, listened to the Quran, and many hearts opened. Islam began spreading faster than ever, not by war, but by peace, truth, and good character. 2 years passed. Then one day the Quraysh broke the treaty. They helped a tribe attack Muslims. This was a clear betrayal. The Prophet now had the right to respond. He gathered an army of 10,000 Muslims, the largest ever seen in Arabia at that time. But this time he wanted no blood. He wanted to enter Mecca in peace. The Muslims marched quietly, without shouting or hurting anyone. They surrounded Mecca from all sides. The Quraysh were shocked. They knew they had no chance. Some of them, like Abu Sufyan, came to the Prophet and asked for forgiveness. The Prophet forgave them. Then came the most powerful moment. The Prophet entered Mecca, not with pride, but with his head bowed in thanks to Allah. He walked straight to the Kaaba, entered it, and removed all the idols. One by one, he knocked them down with his stick, saying, "Truth has come, and falsehood has gone." He stood before the people who had once hurt him, mocked him, and forced him out. They were now scared. But the Prophet said, "I say to you what Joseph said to his brothers, there is no blame on you today. You are free." This was not just a return. It was a victory of forgiveness, mercy, and truth. Mecca was now the city of Islam. The hearts of its people began to soften. The doors of faith were now open wide. Chapter 9. The Final Message. After the peaceful victory in Mecca, Islam began to spread quickly across Arabia. People came from every direction to learn from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They listened to his words, watched his kindness, and saw his truth. More and more tribes accepted Islam with love in their hearts, not because of fear, but because they saw honesty, justice, and peace in his message. The Prophet did not become proud or rich after this success. He still lived a simple life. His home had no gold, no throne, and no guards. He slept on a mat, helped in the house, and gave food to the poor. He reminded his followers that this world is only a test, and the real life is the one after death. In the 10th year after Hijrah, the Prophet prepared for something special, his first and last Hajj, the pilgrimage to the Kaaba. More than 100,000 Muslims joined him. They walked together, all dressed in white, all equal before Allah. It was a powerful sight. No kings, no servants, just brothers and sisters in faith. On the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah, the Prophet stood on the plain of Arafat, under the hot sun, and gave his final sermon. His voice was calm but strong. His words were full of meaning. He reminded the people about kindness, honesty, and unity. He said, "O people, listen carefully. Treat each other as brothers. No Arab is better than a non-Arab. No white is better than black. You are all children of Adam, and Adam was made from dust." He spoke about women, saying, "Treat women kindly. They are your partners and helpers." He warned about oppression, injustice, and cheating. He reminded everyone about the 5 daily prayers, the giving of charity, and fasting in Ramadan. He said, "I leave behind 2 things, the Quran and my example. If you follow them, you will never be lost." Then he looked up at the sky and asked the people, "Have I delivered the message?" The crowd shouted, "Yes, you have!" The prophet raised his finger and said, "O Allah, be my witness." It was a moment that touched every heart. A verse from the Quran was revealed right after. "Today I have completed your religion for you and chosen Islam as your way." After Hajj, the prophet returned to Medina. His mission on earth was almost complete. He had changed hearts, guided people, and built a nation of faith. But his body had grown weak. He became ill and stayed in the house of his wife Aisha. Even while sick, he led the people in prayer or watched them with love. One day, he stood in the mosque, looked at his companions, and smiled. It was a smile of peace. He had done his duty. Soon after, in the arms of Aisha, the prophet closed his eyes and returned to his Lord. The world wept. His companions cried. Even the skies felt silent. But he did not leave behind palaces or gold. He left behind something greater: faith, mercy, and truth. His message had reached the hearts of millions. His life became a guide for all time. And though his body rested in Medina, his light continues to shine in every prayer, every kind act, and every heart that remembers him. Chapter 10. His legacy lives on. After the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, passed away, the people of Medina were filled with sadness. His companions cried. His home was silent. The man who had smiled, helped, taught, and loved them was now gone. But though his body was no longer with them, his light remained, strong in every heart, alive in every word of the Quran, and clear in every prayer. The first to lead the Muslims after him was his best friend, Abu Bakr. He stood before the people and said with tears in his eyes, "Whoever worshipped Muhammad, know that he is dead. But whoever worships Allah, know that Allah is always alive." These words gave comfort. They reminded everyone that Islam was never just about a man. It was about a message from the Creator. The Prophet had built a strong and kind community. He had taught them how to pray, how to be fair, how to forgive, and how to be patient. He taught them to care for orphans, to feed the hungry, to love their neighbors, and to seek knowledge. His example became a perfect guide for people in every land, in every time. Islam spread not by power, but by good character, truth, and mercy. As the years passed, people in different lands accepted the message. They heard the words of the Quran. They read about the Prophet's life. They were touched by his honesty, his kindness, and his beautiful way of dealing with others. His companions traveled across deserts, seas, and mountains to share the light of Islam. They carried the message to Africa, Asia, Europe, and beyond. They did not go as kings or rulers. They went as teachers, helpers, and servants of truth. Wherever they went, they built mosques, schools, and hearts full of faith. The Prophet's life became the most studied life in history. His words were written down, remembered, and shared. Books were filled with his sayings, his actions, and his advice. Children grew up hearing stories of his kindness. Parents taught his lessons in their homes. Scholars explained his teachings in mosques and classrooms. Today, over 1 billion people around the world follow the path of Prophet Muhammad. They say his name with love. They follow his way with respect. When they speak the truth, they remember him. When they forgive others, they walk in his footsteps. When they give to the poor or feed the hungry, they do what he did. He left behind a clear message, that God is one and all humans are equal. He taught that there is no difference between Arab and non-Arab, rich and poor, white and black. What matters is the heart, faith, kindness, and goodness. His final resting place is in Medina, in a peaceful room near the mosque he built with his hands. Every day, people from around the world come to visit. They send peace and blessings upon him. They cry, they smile. They feel close to a man they never met but deeply love. The Prophet once said, "The best among you are those with the best character." And through his life, He showed what the best character looks like, full of love, mercy, patience, truth, and peace. Though the world has changed, his legacy still lives on. In every prayer, in every heart that believes, in every act of kindness, his light continues to shine.